In terms of like the age of the website, I don't think there's like a, set rule for sure, but usually, around the 3 year time frame is like where you should maybe be thinking about changing it to refresh it a bit. You don't have to like rebuild the whole website, but looking at maybe just refreshing it a bit from a look and feel perspective and user experience perspective. Usually we've seen around like the 3 year time frame be realistic.
So the next question that Andrew's got is Ahrefs versus SEMrush. I feel like I know where you're going to go with this, but I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on those two tools.
Yeah, I've used both, and I don't really have a preference, honestly. Like I haven't used SEMrush in a while. I started with SEMrush, went over to Ahrefs, and then I was thinking about going back to SEMrush. But
because of the discount, they got a new discount going this month.
Exactly. No, it was something else. It was like Ahrefs. I prefer the Ahrefs interface, to be honest with you, just because it's a little bit faster.
Okay.
To kind of like navigate through pages and different options and stuff. But they're both great tools. Like, I think there was a limit on like number of projects you can have in SEMrush. So it got to be like way more expensive. You can only add like certain number of websites. On Ahrefs, you can add as many websites as you want, but then it's like credit based. So
my name's Roger. I'm with Kinsta. I'm joined with Nat from Clio Websites. Hey, Nat, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing really well. I'm really excited. In the pre-show, you and I were kind of talking about some of the new AI and SEO stuff and just how things are once again evolving in the SEO landscape. And I'm really excited about today's webinar with you, where we can talk about some of these in some more detail and hopefully give people some actionable insights. I've got an entire outline sitting over here next to me, which we've kind of used to prepare ourselves for the show. Title of it's SEO in 2025, Strategy, Speed, and Staying Ahead. So this is really good stuff. Nat, I've got you on because you are an SEO expert. I'd love, before we start diving into things too far here, for you to kind of give an introduction of yourself and why people should be tuning in and listening to you.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. So my name is Nat Miletic. Have a company called Clio Websites. We've been around for a while, since 2007. So our primary service offering is around, concentrated around WordPress, web development, and SEO. So I've been doing this for a while. There's a team of 8 behind Clio, and we do all kinds of exciting web development and SEO projects.
Excellent. All right. I feel like that is a great introduction here. For myself, if people aren't familiar, my name is Roger Williams. I work for Kinsta in a partnership and community management role. I've been in hosting for over 20 years at this point, which is a crazy number to say out loud, but there it is. And I'm just really excited because I can bring people, experts like Nat here, to help share their expertise, information that probably a lot of the time only their clients are getting to really hear about. I mean, Nat, you're pretty prolific on social media, but still there's almost only so much time in the day to share all of this. So I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to kind of dive into your knowledge here and really explore this topic. What would be really helpful is maybe start with talking about some of the strategic shifts in SEO that you're seeing, that the industry is seeing and talking about in like the last 12 months, like the changes that people should really be focusing on and being aware of.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, interesting, exciting, and kind of like scary at the same time. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of talk about like AI replacing, developers and stuff. And, lots of companies are saying that they can do kind of more with less these days. But I'm seeing actually the biggest shift happen in the SEO space with AI. Not so much the web development space. SEO is impacted quite a bit, especially in the content creation and SEO auditing and strategy sort of arena, where AI is really good at that. We'll jump into that a little bit more. We'll talk about that a little bit more in detail, but definitely a huge impact on SEO as a service and just different like aspects of SEO in result of some of the work that these AI tools can do.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I've been having some really great conversations around AI and the developer side of things lately. And it sounds like with the change is going to be, the actual coding part of development is getting abstracted away a little bit. You can use these tools at least to help you with some syntax errors and some of like the bug troubleshooting that used to take ages. Now you can click a button. On the SEO side, I can speak from a content creation perspective. I've been really struggling with these tools and how to use them and how to use them effectively. I think that is really the essential word that we need to be using: practical, pragmatic, effectiveness. Because I can hit a button now and I can crank out endless reams of content, right? I mean, I can create 30 blog posts in one click of a button, one prompt. But is it actually going to be engaging? Is it going to convert? Is it going to show up in the results for the search engine? So I'm excited to kind of explore these topics with you. There's one new acronym that has been popping up onto the radar. It's this EEAT. And this is still new to me to the point where I still don't remember exactly what it all stands for. Can you walk us through why we need to be eating more and how it applies to our search results?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so the EAT acronym has been around for a while. Actually, people
Okay.
are, people have talked about that in the past, especially in fields that require authority, so such as like health and finance. What do they call those? Your money, your life is the kind of acronym that people use for. Or that Google uses even for like certain websites that deal with either financial or health information.
Okay.
And it's very important to have the authority in those when you're creating content for those types of sites. And so what people did for EAT is basically create some mechanism to show that the website is authoritative by creating like good quality author profiles, showing author credentials and stuff like that, linking out to their credentialed sort of proofs. And there, for a time, I think probably 2 or 3 years ago, it's like everybody was talking about it. And
Okay.
there's still a lot of contention whether or not, that still kind of works as a strategy when it comes to those types of websites. Interestingly enough, SEO from like an AI perspective and getting listed on like chatbots and LLMs and stuff. Now we're finding that this is actually useful from that perspective as well. So, kind of like getting listed on different directories, as an author or as a website or whatever, will kind of increase your authority from kind of like the SEO, the traditional sort of like search engine SEO perspective, but also now we're finding with LLMs that it's actually helping with that as well.
Okay.
So the concept itself is not new with AI. It's been around for a while. It's just it was kind of like repurposed, I think, a little bit, as a result of LLMs. Because now what we're hearing from clients is, I want to get listed on, ChatGPT instead of like I want to be listed on Google or whatever, right? So it's just kind of a little bit different.
Absolutely. So it's the new vanity search, right? Like I remember when I had clients, I would get a message at least once a day of, hey, when I search for X, I'm not coming up. And now I'm assuming you're getting, hey, when I'm prompting X, I'm not showing up. And so now you've got to figure out, you got to balance, right, this vanity search, the new vanity AI search with things that are actually going to be effective. So that's really fascinating to hear that something that's been around for a while is being reprioritized because of these new technologies.
It stands for, I couldn't remember exactly what all the acronyms stands for, but if somebody's watching, it's experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So it's a mouthful for sure.
Absolutely. I think this is really interesting because I was just having a discussion yesterday about Google's AI overview, and this person had done some research about how the overviews are working, specifically how users are interacting with these overviews, and then, whether they're using the information directly from there or if they're doing more research afterwards. And For him, a big component that's now being thrown into the mix is this idea of trust, which, is the T in that acronym. And he was pointing out, you're going even beyond like directories and credential sites, and you're going to things like mentions on Reddit and Quora. And so as a business, really thinking about, your entire online activity is now being included as SEO, it sounds. And so you need to, backlinks are still important, but it's not the only thing you need to be really working on. How are you guiding clients in these discussions?
Yeah, it's a great question. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where we're going back to like, you need to be everywhere, right? So that's the discussion we're having with clients right now. Is like, you have to be on, you have to be on the directory sites. You have to be on, like social media. You have to have a social media profile. Like the more, the better, that kind of stuff, which is kind of unfortunate because you can imagine for like a small business, right? It's very challenging. And even for bigger businesses, like, having a presence on all these social platforms is, I'm sure you can appreciate, it's a lot of work, right? So it's kind of difficult, very time consuming. And so you have to sort of pick, where your ideal client is coming from and prioritizing some of those sort of like areas of either, search engines or LLM, or maybe even direct like social media sort of profiles, and actually promoting a little bit more on social media directly.
Excellent. And I think, maybe that's where it's kind of meeting the client where they're at, right? If they're comfortable doing social media, then yeah, let's pursue social media. But if they're not comfortable with that and forcing them to be, the transparency comes through so quickly when you're not really enthusiastic on Twitter or on Reddit. People can see right through you if you're just doing sales pitches. So working with the client, it sounds like, and figuring out where they want to spend their time and their effort is really important there.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about from an agency perspective. So for the agency people that are watching, what are some takeaways they can be taking, using from this conversation? And I think a great place to start is common mistakes. Where are you seeing agencies either making a mistake or maybe spending too much time focusing on the wrong things?
Yeah, I think for agencies specifically, there are a few sort of like pieces of low-hanging fruit that they could focus on. One of the things that we often find is just from like a web development perspective, that the structure of the website isn't optimized for SEO and for these LLMs as well. That's the most common one we would see. And also like speed, website speed, it's, fairly easy these days to get, decent web performance metrics as well. And internal linking as well is another big one. Those are kind of like the main three, I would say, like looking at the overall structure of the website. That's really the main area that we focus on, where, we call it kind of like the foundation, right? So if you build a website on a good foundation with a good structure, it's clear for users which path to follow. It's clear for these bots and crawlers how the website is structured. That also kind of helps with resolving some of the technical issues that we might have on the website as well, and just kind of like setting up a good foundation. That's what we see as the biggest usually issue when we're working with new clients is, unfortunately, sometimes it's like, well, you're better off starting from scratch, and just kind of rebuilding it properly and then investing more resources into SEO, because if you do it the other way around, it's kind of difficult to, see those results as quickly as people might want to see them. And so that's kind of the most common. And then, page speed and those kinds of things usually, can be remedied easier when you're creating a new website and doing it correctly than, trying to fix performance issues on a site that maybe isn't optimized ideally, right? So that's kind of that's usually almost every project that we get involved in, that for a website that we didn't, create for the client initially, sadly, is like similar approach, so.
No, absolutely. And I feel like we're in a time machine because I remember 2009, these were the same discussions I was having with clients. Or, I mean, I worked at an agency at one point where we were procuring backlinks for their client websites. And I would just look at the client's website and be like, hey, it doesn't matter how many backlinks we get to this site. It's not going to convert because a person can't use this site. But B, the crawlers can't even look at anything that's going on here. You know, the basics and the fundamentals, it's amazing how much we have to keep repeating this broken record. Even in 2025, you know, I see people wanting to use other options besides WordPress, and they because it's easy to use, right? They can sign up, they can click a few buttons, and they have a website, but that they're totally disregarding all of the SEO aspects of these tools, just lacking everything that WordPress gives you pretty much out of the box. So that's really great. And I love, you know, your segue straight into performance and site speed. This kind of leads us into our next segment where we want to talk about what is really important for people to be looking at when it comes to website performance. And, you know, one of the issues with WordPress is it can be really easy to ruin the performance of your website. Plugins are super easy to install. You can get a page builder that you can build as many accordions as you can fit into your mouse click or whatever. I mean, you can really overbuild things and degrade the performance. And of course, I would be remiss without bringing up hosting, since Kinsta is a managed host for WordPress. One of the things that we try and focus on, of course, is speed and performance. And so that's, you know, the servers themselves. We're using Google Cloud. We're using really performant operations and setups with Linux containers. Everything's behind Cloudflare. And so, you know, I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts about what are the measuring sticks that either site owners or agencies should be using these days to really see, hey, is this site performing? And then what specific areas of the site should I be working on to make it more performant?
Yeah, so some of the tools that people use usually for measuring this type of stuff is the Google PageSpeed Insights is a free tool that anybody can use to test the speed of their website. The PageSpeed Insights is a good tool because it integrates with some of the Google tool sets and how they evaluate the speed and health of a website. If people have heard this term of core web vitals, that's kind of like the measurement that Google uses whether or not your website is speedy and efficient. Core web vitals are really important because they show up in your Google Search Console, and that's how Google evaluates whether or not like people are experiencing good sort of user performance or user experience, right, on the website. So that's kind of like the starting point, I would say, in terms of performance. However, I would just caution people. I have seen sort of, you know, people that are a little bit more SEO savvy, even agencies, you know, that do this type of work, you know, they're always trying to aim for like 100% on mobile or, you know, 99%, like the faster the better kind of thing. I would say don't like trust those scores or chase those blindly either, just because sometimes you have to take some trade-offs, you know, when you're dealing with performance in order to improve the user experience, for example. So without getting into a lot of detail, but one of the prime examples of that is like delaying all the JavaScript on your website, right? Where, you know, on Google, you know, PageSpeed Insights, it looks great. You're getting 100%. But when somebody goes to the website and they don't click on anything, they might get a blank screen or they might get a website that's not fully loaded. So when they click on something or they move their mouse, then all of a sudden these interactions start to happen on the website. From a core web vitals perspective, you're doing great. But from a user perspective, you're not doing so great because they might have some issues navigating your website or taking an action that you want them to take. So sometimes you have to, you know, to balance those things. So I would only caution people, don't follow it blindly to be like, I need 99% or 100% on mobile. You know, that's sometimes not as important as user experience of like interacting with the site and using it. But obviously, you know, the faster the better. Especially if you're, you know, if you have an e-commerce business where people are making purchases and, you know, using the website for that, you know, purpose, it's very important to be fast and to avoid those cart abandonment issues. And even just, even if it's a service business, for people to be able to contact you quickly and fill out a form and kind of be in and out, right? And that's where I think Kinsta is really good. We, for a lot of our clients where like performance and reliability is an important factor, we're just like, yeah, just sign up for Kinsta and you don't have to worry about that.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for the plug there. We've got a quick question in, and I love it. Endry is in the comments asking, how can we optimize LCP, especially images? And I'm missing out on the acronym here. LCP, are you picking up what that is? Okay.
Yeah, so there's a few different sort of areas on PageSpeed Insights where it kind of like, there's a few areas where how Google PageSpeed Insights measures the performance of the website. LCP is one of those metrics. And so I forget what it stands for, actually.
It's contentful paint?
Largest contentful paint. Yeah.
Okay.
And they measure it, I think it's, if you're doing like 2.5 seconds or less, you're considered good. If you're doing higher than that, you're doing kind of medium or poor or whatever. And then if you're over 4 seconds, they'll give you like a red symbol, meaning you need to address that. LCP can be a problem for a number of different reasons. It could be like large images. It could be sometimes something like a large font file. It's very hard to say it's one thing because it could be a number of things. For example, what we found recently, and I don't know if this question is referring to that, is there was actually an issue with PageSpeed Insights where it was identifying an LCP as an issue for a large majority of sites due to an algorithm change or something that they did, where we were finding that it was just like very difficult to get around that error. What can help with that is, for example, if you're using WordPress, WP Rocket and some of those plugins can delay things. They can lazy load images, for example. They can do certain things to alleviate the LCP issue, but LCP can be exacerbated by, scripts. It could be exacerbated by large images. So it's kind of hard to say it's one thing. It's usually a combination of things, and PageSpeed Insights will give you recommendations based on that particular score to be like, this is actually what's causing it. And then you can work to address that. The bug that I was talking about is referring to something that for LCP specifically, it was like, this particular section is causing an issue. So it doesn't really give you an answer like, is it an image? Is it a font? So you kind of have to do some guesswork and troubleshoot it. So, without going into a lot of details, PageSpeed Insight is great at giving you those recommendations that you can, you have to work through sometimes one by one to address them, without doing like a quick fix like WP Rocket, just like enabling all the settings and then hoping for the best. Sometimes you have to go one by one, and it's quite the process.
Okay, excellent. So I hope Endry, we kind of addressed your concern there. But one thing I'll jump in and mention is at Kinsta, in the My Kinsta dashboard, when you're in an individual site, if you go to the caching tab on the left, there's an option for image compression. And so we're using Cloudflare's Polish tool to do image compression for you on the fly. And if you're not hosted at Kinsta, there's many plugins you can use for this. You can also do this locally on your computer. But I think, again, one of the nice advantages at Kinsta is we've got this tool built in. There's the option for lossless or lossy compression. You can choose how you want that to be done, and we just handle that for you on the fly. So, I think another thing that a lot of people maybe miss the boat on here is resizing their images properly. I know this is something I used to make the mistake of was, maybe I had a photo from my iPhone, which is a massive image to put onto a web page when I only need something that's like 480 pixels wide or even smaller sometimes. And so making sure you're resizing those images properly so that it's just loading it only what you need and nothing more really can make a huge difference. As we're kind of moving forward here, so we're kind of approaching our time. When you're talking about actionable SEO wins, let's maybe get like a kind of like beginner, intermediate, and advanced kind of suggestions here, if you don't mind. So I'm kind of brand new to SEO. Where should I get started? Like, what are the first real things I should be focused on? It sounds like on-page SEO is probably the best place to start. Other than like completely rebuilding my website, what are some things I could do this week to really kind of help things out?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I like to recommend to people is sign up for like a free SEO tool. Just do like an SEO audit. Ahrefs is a great tool. You can like sign up for a free account where you could do a free audit basically on a website, and it'll give you a bunch of like actionable tips that you can apply to your website in order to improve the performance. We also have a tool that we developed called SEOtest.me, and it's good for testing individual pages. So if you need, like, let's say you put in your URL homepage and you want to get some quick tips on like what to improve or any issues, you can use that tool for free and like crawl a specific page of a website. Ahrefs is great if you want to do a crawl of the entire site. So it's a little bit more comprehensive, and it'll do an entire crawl of the website. It'll give you kind of like a score, and it'll give you recommendations on what you can fix. So that's a great like beginner strategy, because not only will you get an audit of your website, you'll also get some tips specific to like, here's an issue, here's how to fix it, right? So they'll kind of even teach you. SEO is vast, right? So it's like such a huge area where some people, specialize in just like technical SEO. Other people specialize in like backlink acquisition. There's like so many areas, right? So it's a little bit overwhelming. So that's where I would start, because that'll teach you a lot when it comes to like technical SEO.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Do you want me to go to like medium and advanced too?
Yeah. Where would you go? So I've got the audit. I've kind of fixed some of the low-hanging fruit. Where should I start going to next in terms of building out my SEO strategy?
So the next thing you can do without rebuilding a website as well is looking at some of that internal linking within your website. So optimizing sort of the user experience and what pages you're linking to within your website. So for example, important pages that you want to drive traffic to, you want to link as many internal hyperlinks to that page from your website. So that means like on the home page, let's say you have a service page for web design. You want to link from the home page to that web design page. And also all the other pages should be linked to that specific page. That's like an example of internal linking. Again, internal linking is a little bit more of a medium sort of strategy, medium difficulty. You have to learn a lot more about like how to apply that. There's that. And then there's also the structure and content creation. So you need to learn a little bit more about, if I'm, for example, trying to promote a particular service, I need a lot of supporting content for that particular service on how to, boost that page from an SEO perspective. So that's kind of like a more of a medium strategy, setting up a good structure on your existing site, creating some content that supports the services or pages that you want to promote.
Excellent, excellent. Before we go into the advanced, as a like kind of a bookmark here, how do like navigation links work into this, both in the header and the footer? Do those count as internal linking, or is that kind of degraded because it's header and footer stuff?
Yeah, great question. Again, they are deemed as not as important as actual internal links on a page. So a lot of people mistake that mistake where they're like, I'm interlinking a lot because this page is in my menu, right? So it's linked everywhere. And while technically that's true, it's, those are usually wrapped around like a header or footer tag. So Google devaluates them a little bit. So the value of a link is usually like, for your most authoritative page, usually your home page, if you're linking to a specific page, the higher up on the page as possible, that's like a high value link, pointing to the page you want to rank. So there's a lot of different like nuances when it comes to interlinking. That's why I said it's kind of like a intermediate type difficulty problem, right? That people need to research a little bit more. And that's one of the things, like common misconception, where people say, well, I have it in my footer or header, so it's like a valuable one because I'm linking to it everywhere. But actually it's not as important as like having it on an actual page.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so let's go big boy time, big gal time, advanced SEO techniques. What are you looking at?
Yeah, like I think still, if you're trying to rank on Google specifically and other search engines, a backlink acquisition is still like the one that will set you kind of like above your competitors. The higher the authority of your site, the better. That's still the most difficult, I would say, in order to, acquire those links. What you want to do is have authoritative sites linking back to your site. So not just any site creating like a bunch of like, spammy links on thousands of different sites, but, getting good authoritative links pointing back to your site. And that's the most difficult part, I would say. You either have to pay somebody to do that, or you need to spend a lot of time like promoting yourself, doing, being on social media, creating relationships with different companies in order to get a link created back to your site and those kinds of things. So it's very time consuming, and it's very difficult for somebody who's just starting out to do, and to know what type of link is valuable and where it should point to, right, is another sort of aspect. So it's still the most difficult. I've seen some, very slow and crappy looking sites that rank very well because they have a very good link profile, that might get devalued a little bit with the AI overviews on Google. What I'm finding now and what I'm reading is that a lot of people are not going past that AI overview, right? So even if you are, getting that snippet in the AI overview, your people are not clicking at the links. They're not scrolling down. They just get their answer and they're done, right? So they just kind of crawl away, right? So.
Absolutely. What are there any tools that you're using? I know that back in the day, it was like Moz was really good for looking at domain authority. Is that still like, what are the tools now that you're using to kind of help give you an idea of what might be a good page versus not?
Yeah, so we use Ahrefs. There's a few others out there. All the SEO tools kind of have their own sort of ranking or authority score. But keep in mind that, Google probably has their own. So all of these tools can give you a really good indication on like where you're at. It doesn't mean that if you have 99 on Ahrefs that all of a sudden you're the most authoritative site on the internet, because Google probably looks at it slightly differently. So, but they're a good metric. They're a good metric to determine like if you're moving in the right direction, if you are authoritative based on other websites in your niche or your industry. So it's still a good kind of measuring stick, but again, take it with a grain of salt because it can also be easily manipulated as well.
Okay, all right. And I think all of this kind of harkens back. I remember way back in the day, 15, maybe 20 years ago now, there was an SEO specialist and a blogger, and they kind of did a competition of who could outrank each other or something for a certain keyword. And the SEO person was, put this huge backlinking and some of the dark arts of SEO into action. And the blogger just reached out to his network and said, hey, everybody, put a backlink to me with this keyword as the anchor text. And he blew the doors off the SEO person. And so I think, and especially with SEO now being more AI driven with these AI overviews and ChatGPT results, is having your network and having content that actually speaks to people and gets them to respond to it is still the winning combination. You can manufacture as much as you want, but if you can actually connect with people and get them to be your customers, right? Like that's the goal, but also your fans and your champions. That's going to help a ton here. Nat, I've really appreciated this. We're kind of at time a little bit here. I wanted to spend a little bit of time kind of going over some questions here. Endry is just blowing up the question area. Thank you so much for your questions, Endry. One thing that he asked specifically is, do you recommend Rank Math AI content for blogs?
Rank Math AI content for blogs. I haven't used Rank Math's AI much.
Okay.
To comment, I'm not sure what engine they're using in the background. I would caution against using like just AI content blindly for any type of content creation. It's great for like creating content overviews and getting ideas and stuff, but I wouldn't use any of those AI generated sort of blog posts blindly where I'm just copying and pasting it and posting it on my website. We use AI for some content creation, but we also, have that like human touch where we go through it, modify it, make sure it makes sense and so forth. So I haven't used the Rank Math one specifically, but all of them are basically using the same engine. So you can use like, ChatGPT or any of the other LLMs in order to create content these days. Just be cautious of making sure it still makes sense and you're still touching it up and making it like not as obvious to humans that you've generated it with AI.
Sure, no, absolutely. And I'm not familiar with that tool either, but I can tell you from my use of ChatGPT is I will run into kind of a similar issue where, if I just say, hey, create me some content about SEO, it's really going to crank out some really generic stuff that, it's not going to look any different from anything else. It's not going to give people anything new or insightful to kind of go with. And so they're going to kind of tell that. But on the flip side, when I use things like if I take a transcript, like such as the transcript from this interview, and I load that into there and then I use it to kind of help me build an outline and maybe even build some of the content, I find a lot more success in terms of engaging content with that. So, it's as much as you're putting in, you're going to get out of these tools, I think. Great. So the next question that Andrew's got is Ahrefs versus SEMrush. I feel like I know where you're going to go with this, but I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on those two tools.
Yeah, I've used both, and I don't really have a preference, honestly. Like, I haven't used SEMrush in a while. I started with SEMrush, went over to Ahrefs, and then I was thinking about going back to SEMrush. But
because of the discount, they got a new discount going this month.
Exactly. No, it was something else. It was like Ahrefs. I prefer the Ahrefs interface, to be honest with you, just because it's a little bit faster.
Okay.
To kind of like navigate through pages and different options and stuff. But they're both great tools. Like, I think there was a limit on like number of projects you can have in SEMrush. So it got to be like way more expensive. You can only add like certain number of websites. On Ahrefs, you can add as many websites as you want, but then it's like credit based. So, if you're not like doing crawls all the time or whatever, you can add like 100 websites, right? But in SEMrush, you can only add like, 5 or 10 or 15 or whatever, right? So it's
Okay.
that was the only reason why I preferred Ahrefs, in the past. I don't know if that's changed, but now I'm kind of on Ahrefs and I've been using it for a while, but totally indifferent. They're both great tools.
Excellent. Back in the day, I used to use Screaming Frog. Is that still a tool that's pretty useful? Where do you use that in your stack?
Definitely, yeah. Like Screaming Frog is great for technical audits. So you can put in a URL of a website and it'll crawl the whole website and give you a good, indication of like the technical health. Ahrefs and SEMrush do the same thing as well. Screaming Frog is just a little bit more efficient and faster at it. So if you have a huge site, Screaming Frog is going to go through it very quickly and give you some good indications on like what needs to be fixed.
Excellent. All right. And then finally, Andrew's asking about Kinsta versus some cloud hosting. I'm not familiar with that brand, wink, wink.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Where's the difference? And so, I can kind of speak to this a little bit. I think, when you're looking at cloud hosting, there's different levels of it and in terms of how integrated they are with the cloud host. So what I can tell you is that at Kinsta, we have a DevOps team who are all Google Cloud platform experts. And so they spend their day, looking at what we've got currently, tweaking it, making sure that it's the most efficient. But we're also looking at the horizon and what Google's got coming next. And so one of the big things we did a few years ago, Google came out with new machines. They call them C3D machines. The prior were C2. And we made the decision to just upgrade all of our clients' websites to those faster machines as they came out. Not all the Google data centers have these faster machines yet, but as they're released, we're upgrading all of our clients' websites, and that's at no additional charge. So that to me speaks a lot about our focus on performance and speed. We want our clients to have the best possible experience with their websites for their clients. And so I think that really speaks volumes to our philosophy. There's a lot of little things in there. So we use Linux containers for all of the sites. So you've got your own Nginx server, your own MySQL database, your own PHP. That also means you have your own instance of WP CLI. So all of those are working really efficiently. And then there's knock-on effects from that. So when we do a backup, we're taking a snapshot of the container. And so when we restore it, we're just restoring the entire container. And so we're not messing with files and databases. The whole thing gets restored. And so our backups work really quickly. And that's something I would encourage that you test at any hosting provider you've got that's providing you with backups, or God forbid you're having to use a plugin for doing backups. Make sure you're testing those every once in a while. Make sure that the backup actually works, and see how long it takes for it to restore, so that when there is an emergency or somebody does make a mistake, you know how long it's going to take to resolve that mistake and get the restore back and working. There's a whole lot of things. I could spend another hour talking about all the features at Kinsta, but the last one I'll really hit on is support. WordPress websites are complicated. There's a lot of different ways that you can configure them. You're using third-party software in a lot of cases. I mean, WordPress itself is third-party, but it's pretty stable. But you're using plugins, and a lot of times you have no idea who's maintaining these plugins, and things can go wrong. And that's where support really becomes an absolutely essential part of your plan, your operations. Being able to reach out to Kinsta, we have an under 2-minute response time. Our support engineers are all WordPress experts. We only have one tier of support, so the person you're talking with is going to handle you through till resolution. And even if it's something that's out of our scope of support, we're not here to develop. We're not going to touch your code, but we will do our best to point at what we think is affecting it. So if it is something in your site, we're going to try and help pinpoint that for you. So I can't downplay support enough, but Nat, I'd love to hear maybe your thoughts in a couple of minutes here of what you think about Kinsta hosting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, not all cloud providers are created equal, for sure. Like when it comes to hosting, just because even if if you think you're comparing apples to apples, for example, like, oh, I'm just like renting a server on Google Workspace through this one provider or another provider, there's a lot more configuration that goes into it behind the scenes. And so to give you a practical example, we've moved sites from one cloud provider to Kinsta, for example, and saw like a crazy improvement in performance. Even though, like, if you look at it from a spec perspective, oh, I'm getting like a server with this many CPUs or whatever in memory here and there, it really, it's still a significant difference in terms of performance, just because how the hosting is sort of tuned and configured for WordPress. So it's something that's kind of seems like a little bit not as intuitive, because you would think, well, it just comes down to specs or whatever. But there's actually a lot of different things when it comes to configuring these servers for WordPress specifically that make them run efficiently. Because like you said, Roger, it's like very complicated. There's databases, there's files, there's all kinds of configuration things that need to be tuned correctly for all of this to work for busy and complex sites. So that's one thing where I think like Kinsta is really good at tuning those environments for WordPress websites to make them quick and efficient. And then the other thing is support. Some other providers, I've stumped them before, but with like Kinsta support, even for complex issues, I've never like stumped them where they're like not sure. And then I have to deal with it myself, kind of thing. So yeah, I've always had, so that's like a huge, especially for agencies, because, you don't need basic support. You usually need something a little bit beyond basic, because you've already tried the basic things and it didn't work, right? So it's something configuration wise where, you might need to tweak things. And that's where the hosting provider kind of provides that extra layer of support, which is great. And which is something that like I really appreciate with the Kinsta hosting.
Beautiful. I couldn't put it any better. And the support team is going to really be happy to hear all of that. With that said, it looks like we've gotten all of the questions answered. Thank you so much, Endri, for playing along here. Nat, I really appreciate your time and your insights. I've got a lot to unpack here. It sounds like the basics are still critical. You need to have a good website. You need to make sure that it's performant. You need to make sure your internal linking, it is amazing to me how often I'll be on the homepage of a website and I'll be totally lost of what should I do from here. And so, if you want somebody to buy something, put that buy now button in there. And then finally, backlinks. Backlinks will never go away. I mean, it's going to be just part of the system here. All right, we do have one last question. Endri getting just inside of the line here. In your opinion, Nat, what's the best way to build a WordPress site? Are you building from WordPress core plus Elementor Pro? or pick a theme or a builder? Like where's your stack at right now? Where are you building for clients and suggesting people go?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways. That's the great thing about WordPress, there's so many different ways to build an awesome website. So I'm not going to say my way is the right way or the only way for sure. But we use Elementor Pro for like 99% of our projects. We use their Hello theme, so we build everything from scratch, and we've had some great results with that. There's different. We've used the Bricks builder as well, which is also great. And I know a lot of people are using the new full site editing as well for from a performance perspective, and kind of keeping up with some of the latest sort of WordPress trends and stuff as well. So, there's a lot of different ways. There's no right or wrong way. Actually, there is a wrong way. It's like buying a cheap theme somewhere and just like installing like 1,000 plugins. That's the wrong way. So what I would recommend is like pick a tool that's fast and efficient that you can learn and grow with, and become an expert in that tool and use that tool for all of the different projects that you do.
Excellent. All right. And so a quick follow-up to that then is, I know that there's always this concern when you rebuild a website of losing your SEO authority, right? Because you've changed how the linking structure works, whatever. How much should people be concerned about that? And then B, what's a good cadence for refreshing the design of your website? How many years should somebody wait before they're like, you know what, I think I just need to rebuild the whole website?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some horror stories, unfortunately, where, clients have rebuilt their websites where we were like doing SEO for them, and, they totally, missed the boat on certain key things and kind of saw their rankings decrease, unfortunately. So, unfortunately, sometimes they don't let us know that they're rebuilding the website. And then we find out later, like, well, why did your rankings drop? Because they sometimes didn't take the right steps. So we specialize in that. We do a lot of projects where SEO is top of mind and we're rebuilding the website for the client. And so we have a process of like following certain steps to ensure that that doesn't happen. What you want to see is that your rankings increase with the redevelopment of a site, not decrease, right? And in terms of like the age of the website, I don't think there's like a set rule for sure, but usually around the 3-year time frame is like where you should maybe be thinking about changing it to refresh it a bit. You don't have to like rebuild the whole website, but looking at maybe just refreshing it a bit from a look and feel perspective and user experience perspective. Usually we've seen around like the 3-year time frame be realistic.
Okay. All right. Excellent. All right. Well, with that said, questions are closed. Nat, I really do appreciate your time, man. I look forward to speaking with you again soon. If people want to hire you or just say hi to you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, add me on LinkedIn for sure, and check out our website, cliowebsites.com.
Beautiful. All right. And my name's Roger. I'm with Kinsta. If you're interested in learning more about Kinsta, head over to our website, kinsta.com. You can read a whole bunch there. You can click to talk to a salesperson. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. Feel free to reach out and ask questions, say hello, and I'd love to talk to you. So with that said, Nat, great talking to you, man.
Hey, thanks, Roger. Thanks for the opportunity. Great chatting with you as well.
Absolutely. Ciao.